Atletico Madrid signed Julian Alvarez from Manchester City for £82 million. Hi there, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Julian Alvarez is swapping Manchester for Madrid in an £82 million move. It is a club record sale for City, but could we see Manchester City go back into the market for a replacement? Also on the way for you tonight, Conor Gallagher's move to Madrid is still not completed. We'll tell you who holds the key to that deal going through following the collapse of Samuel Meridian's proposed move to Chelsea. Could it be third time lucky for Newcastle as they submit a third offer for Crystal Palace defender Mark Gahey? And Matthias de Ligt and Mr. Mazraoui arrive in Manchester ahead of their moves to Manchester United from Bayern Munich. Oh, there's lots going on when we're not in vision, dare I say. Mark McAdam, Dharma Chef, join me tonight because it's really busy, actually, I have to say. Lots of things are breaking all the time. So we're going to start with some breaking news. Mark, what can you tell us? Yeah,
just as we were going on air, we got confirmation of this story. It's a story we've been talking about on Sky Sports News for the last few days, and Brentford have confirmed Fabio Carvalho is now a B. They tweeted it about 20 minutes ago with a silhouette, and it's now been confirmed. And this is the statement that's been released by the football club. It says Brentford have signed Fabio Carvalho from Liverpool on a 5-year deal with a 1-year club option. The former Fulham midfielder played 21 times for the Reds and impressed for Arne Slot's side during their pre-season tour of the United States this summer. Thomas Frank has also been quoted, and he said as well, Fabio is the type of player that we don't have many of in the squad, so he will add that, something extra for us. The 21-year-old has joined for a total package worth £27.5 million. We know that there was a rejected bid from Liverpool earlier on in the window from Southampton, which we understand to be worth 15, but Brentford put onto the table an offer that Liverpool quite simply couldn't refuse. I know that Arne Slot was keen on working with Fabio Carvalho, didn't want him to go. However, he understood that this was a deal the club simply couldn't turn down. He had 2 loan spells last season at RB Leipzig and in the second half of the campaign in the EFL, in the Championship with Hull, where he scored 9 goals in 20 games, made a real impact in the second tier and was viewed very much as one for the future at Liverpool. But like we say, 27.5 million as a total package was just too much for them to turn down, bearing in mind they'd picked him up from Fulham just 2 summers ago for £5 million.
Gosh, what a return.
It'll be a theme of the show. Big business being done, big profits being made by these Premier League sides as they sell some of those younger players. And like Thomas Frank says, they've got someone that could add that little bit of X factor to that Brentford side. Do you think generally teams are being pretty savvy because of PSR rules? Do you think that's, you know, kind of help things that in order they need to make the profit? Well, they need to be clever. They need to be creative. There are rules in place at the moment, and you also have to remember there are some other shadow rules that are in place for this forthcoming season as well, which potentially could mean that PSR changes next summer. And therefore, clubs have to be sensible. They have to be sustainable. They can't spend beyond their means. They have to make sure they have high turnover and that everything they do fits into what the financial parameters that have been set out by the Premier League are. As we've seen, Everton, Nottingham Forest, teams are being penalised when you break the rules. And I think over the course of the last 6 months or so, that has proved to be a stark warning for a number of Premier League sides that maybe were sailing a little bit close to the wind. Suddenly they say, actually, no, we have to make sure we fall within these rules because there are real penalties here.
Oh, that's a great bit of profit. Talking of a great bit of profit, let's get to the biggest story of the day so far. £82 million for Julian Alvarez. I'm not ignoring you, Dharma Chef, but I'm staying with you, Mark. Can you tell us a little bit more about this deal?
Yeah, huge deal. A huge deal for Manchester City. We'll talk about that in just a few moments, but we got confirmation from Manchester City earlier on today that they had sold Julian Alvarez to Atletico Madrid in a deal worth potentially up to £82 million, which once again is a sizable profit on a player that they brought in from River Plate just a couple of summers ago for around £14 million. Not only has he signed a 6-year contract with the La Liga club, he's had really a really successful period of time in the Premier League, not only with Manchester City, where he's won 2 Premier League titles and been a part of that side with Pep Guardiola, but also on the international stage as well. Playing for Argentina, he's been superb. World Cup, Copa America, a part of that Lionel Messi dynasty. So, yeah, this is a deal that's been confirmed. And I think you just have to look at the statements and you can see the affection, the respect and the love that Manchester City have for Julian Alvarez. It's a real classy statement, and I think it's all ending on positive, happy terms. He's got a massive opportunity in La Liga to go and work with Diego Simeone, one of the best managers in Europe. Manchester City have got a huge profit on a player that was really only their second striker. And bearing in mind, they've sold him for 30 million more than they paid for Erling Haaland. And that shows you just how good this business is.
Yeah, £82 million looks a tidy bit of business for Manchester City. They're going to enjoy what they've done there.
Yes, something like £68 million profit if he fulfills all the conditions.
Yeah.
Because the deal is worth £82 million, but that includes performance-related add-ons. But if Atletico Madrid end up paying £82 million, Manchester City win, Julian Alvarez will win because he'll have performed well, and Atletico Madrid will have won as well because they will have been successful while Alvarez is there. But they don't half sell well, Manchester City. They always seem to make good money on any of the players that they sell. And the other thing I will say is a lot of City fans will be pretty gutted that he's going. But when it comes down to it, if a player wants to leave and City can do a deal, Pep Guardiola never stands in a player's way if they don't want to be at the football club. The deal has to be right, of course it does. But if a player comes to him and says, I see my future elsewhere, he will privately possibly try and convince him to stay. But publicly, he will always say, if the player doesn't want to be here, then we will let him go, provided we can get the right deal. This looks like the right deal if it's £82 million all in compared to a £14 million outlay.
And just put it into perspective for us in terms of other Premier League exports. How big is this deal, do you feel, Mark?
Well, this is certainly right up there with some of the biggest deals leaving the Premier League. And like Damesh says, it's a huge package. The biggest sale for Manchester City before the departure of Julian Alvarez was Raheem Sterling to Chelsea, which was worth £50 million. And this is sizably bigger than that. Let's take a look at the situation with regards to those big deals from City. Then you can see Julian Alvarez out there in front on 82 million. Then Ferran Torres, who went to Barcelona a couple of summers ago for 55.2. Leroy Sané, been linked with a return to the Premier League this summer, hasn't he? As he ties up a new deal potentially at Bayern Munich. Raheem Sterling, as we say there as well, big deal there. And Gabriel Jesus and Cole Palmer, two of their other record sales.
They always seem to get it right. They know the right time to sell a player that's still brilliant. You know, we see those ones there, Cole Palmer, prime example, and to get a really good return for them.
Yes, it's something that they do. I think you have to look at Manchester City as a business model, as a commercial entity, and they seem to be able to generate huge funds from players in the under-23 setup. We've seen that with a number of those players, Cole Palmer being one of them. And they also find the right time to let those first-team players leave when it suits Manchester City. They don't really ever let someone go and then regret it immediately because they seem to have those players stocked up, ready to jump into the boots, jump into that starting 11. So I think that's something they've done very well. The thing about Manchester City and Pep Guardiola, there are players around the world queuing up to be a part of that squad. They don't need convincing to go and join Pep Guardiola and Manchester City because it's a club that is always challenging for silverware. They're always getting to the latter stages of cup competitions and everyone wants to finish their career and to be able to say, I played for Pep Guardiola, I was a part of one of his teams, and no question about his qualities. When you look at the situation with other Premier League exports, this is the players that have left the Premier League for huge funds, and you can see Philippe Coutinho, 146 million to Barcelona from Liverpool back in 2018. You can see Eden Hazard to Real Madrid. Harry Kane, of course, last summer to Bayern Munich. Gareth Bale, another huge deal. And then Julian Alvarez, fifth on that list of departures from the English top flight. Cristiano Ronaldo, that seemed like a long time ago. Still on that list, though, even though it was 15 years ago. But again, that puts into perspective just how good a deal this is for Manchester City.
OK, let's turn our attentions to Chelsea then, because I have three players, as if by magic, behind me. Talk about the domino effect that these three are involved in.
Yeah, so if we look at this player on our left here, Samu Omarodion, from Atletico Madrid. There are now issues with Chelsea's pursuit of this player. A deal had been agreed, we told you last week, for around £34.5 million. However, Chelsea have so far been unable to agree personal terms with Omarodion. As a result, as it stands, that deal to take Omarodion from Atletico Madrid to Chelsea is off. And that is now having a knock-on effect on Conor Gallagher and his move from Chelsea to Atletico Madrid. We do know that a £36 million deal had been agreed between Atletico and Chelsea. Personal terms had been agreed, unlike with Omarodion, and he was even photographed at the stadium last week. But there was a caption that just said, Conor Gallagher in the stadium while Chelsea finalised this deal. We expected that announcement to be coming very, very soon after that. The weekend passed and still no announcement, and we thought, is something wrong with this deal? That deal on its own, nothing wrong at all. It's all ready to go. But now we know why this one hasn't gone through is because it's down to the breakdown of the Omarodion deal.
Right.
Because what has happened, Julian Alvarez's deal, that was going to happen anyway. Manchester City were confident that the deal that they had with Atletico Madrid was independent of any other deal that was happening elsewhere. However, these two deals were connected. For Conor Gallagher to go to Atletico Madrid, it required Omarodion to go from Atletico to Chelsea. Now that that part of it has broken down, Conor Gallagher, who's still out in Madrid, just awaiting developments, he's in a bit of limbo. How is he going to get this deal over the line? Because Chelsea want it to happen. Atletico Madrid are desperate to want it to happen. So now Atletico Madrid are going to have to try and get another player to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And the player under discussion is João Felix, who used to play for Chelsea in a loan spell for around 6 months. In the 2022-2023 season, I think he scored 4 goals in 14 starts in all competitions. So while Chelsea try and do a deal with Atletico Madrid, and if they can do it, that will then unlock the deal for Conor Gallagher once again, because it was unlocked with Omarodion going to Chelsea. Since that one's broken down, it became locked again. How are they going to be able to do this deal? If João Felix can make a move from Atletico to Chelsea, then Conor Gallagher can then make that move from Chelsea to Atletico.
I've got to ask the question, why are they so keen then to sort of rid themselves of Conor Gallagher? Because actually, he's been a great player for them at times, certainly.
Yeah, huge part of Chelsea last season.
Yeah.
Mauricio Pochettino gave him the captain's armband. He's come through the academy. He loves Chelsea. However, shuffled out of the exit door at Stamford Bridge. I think there's probably 2 things. One will be Enzo Maresca has looked at Conor Gallagher and decided he's not the type of midfielder I want for my Chelsea midfield. So therefore, game time for him is going to be limited. So actually, it makes sense for the club to sell him. He's only going to be really on the bench for me. He's not going to play a big role in this new-look Chelsea side. So therefore, that's my thought process on it. However, Chelsea commercially and financially will be looking at this going, well, this represents 100% profit with regards to PSR. And I know a lot of football fans will be getting frustrated with me and Dharmesh because we seem to be mentioning PSR in every single transfer deal. What, you know, why is this a factor? Why have they got to be careful? Why do they need 100% profit? However, this will make a massive difference to Chelsea's accountancy books when they look at the situation and they can offset a huge 100% profit. That could be the difference between them failing PSR and coming on the right side of it. So therefore, they'll look at this deal and say, this works for us as a football club with the current rules. Therefore, that's why we needed to do it. And Enzo Maresca, as the head coach, was comfortable with not having Conor Gallagher in his team.
And they do have a lot of players on their books. I think it's 46 registered players. So I'm guessing Conor Gallagher isn't the only player that they're going to be looking to rid themselves of before the window shuts.
I mean, Mark makes a point about PSR. I don't want to keep mentioning it, though, but I mean, it is pure profit for Gallagher. They're looking potentially to sell Trevor Chalobah as well. He would represent pure profit as far as Chelsea are concerned, even though he signed a new long-term contract only last summer. And it's until, like, what, a 7-year contract, I think he signed. But he didn't feature for them in pre-season. And there are some reports that are even suggesting that he's not part of the first-team setup at all. Armando Broja, another player who has been on loan away from Chelsea in the past couple of seasons, he would represent pure profit as well for Chelsea. So I think these are the players that Chelsea are trying to get money for. And another one, who is a high-profile one, who they spent, £90 million on, is Romelu Lukaku. And Napoli, we think, are still trying to do a deal for Romelu Lukaku. A gap in valuation still exists between what Chelsea want and what Napoli are prepared to pay. And it's quite a big gap in valuation because we think Chelsea want around 43 million euros for Romelu Lukaku. Napoli want to start dealing at around 30 million euros. So it's not a small gap in valuation. There's still a lot of work to be done on this deal. But it's clear Lukaku remains the primary target of Antonio Conte. And you can understand why. He's played for Antonio Conte before, quite famously in the 2020-21 season for Inter Milan when they won their Serie A title. And Lukaku was fantastic under Antonio Conte. And when Conte came in, it was one of the first things he mentioned to Napoli. I want to bring in Romelu Lukaku. He's key to how I want to play this season for Napoli. The only issue they've got is they've got a player there already in Victor Osimhen who they need to get rid of effectively. And the problem they've got at the moment is he's made it clear that he wants to go. And Napoli have made it public that he wants to go. What that will do to any kind of asking price is open to debate. But we do know that there's a release clause in his contract that's over £100 million. Who's going to pay that much money? We do know that Paris Saint-Germain are interested. They're exploring a loan with an obligation or even a permanent deal. Napoli prefer permanent, or at least have some sort of permanent aspect inserted into that deal, be it a loan with an obligation, but they can't afford to have both Lukaku and Osimhen at the club at the same time, simply because of the wages that both of these players will be on. There has been interest and strong interest from Saudi Arabia in Victor Osimhen. However, at the moment, he wants to stay in one of European football's top 5 leagues. He wants to play Champions League football. I think in an ideal scenario, Napoli's preferred destination for him would be Saudi Arabia, because the likelihood is they would be able to stump up the cash and everyone could move on. But he probably doesn't want to go to Saudi at this stage. This looks like one that will have a bit of brinkmanship involved in it. The later in the window we go, with PSG continually knocking on the door until they get to a point where, well, we're desperate to get Lukaku because we want to please the manager, but we have to get rid of Osimhen. We'll have to do this deal. It won't be ideal for Napoli, and it might be a compromise between what PSG want to pay and what Napoli want.
All right, we're in the business of transfers, and we might just be able to get a little bit of a steer on another one right now, because the opening weekend of the Championship comes to a close tonight. Luton hosting Burnley. Our reporter Gary Cottrell is at Kenilworth Road for us and has the team news. And is it very relevant, Gary Cottrell, that there is no sign of Burnley's Sander Berge?
Well, of course, you know on the transfer show that Sander Berge's name has been mentioned in relation to Manchester United and their midfield search. We understand, don't we, that they've had an interest in him, that they may well have opened initial talks, and that Sander Berge, given the opportunity, would like to go to Manchester United. You're right, he's not in the starting lineup for this match tonight. He's not on the bench. He's not travelled with the squad. Now, Scott Parker wasn't asked about his absence in the pre-match interview, I understand, but I have managed to find out from within the club that we perhaps shouldn't read too much into it, because they say he's got, quotes, a niggle. It's a niggle that has kept him out of much pre-season action, if any pre-season action at all, and that's why he's not involved tonight. Now, a niggle could be an excuse, a niggle could be a reality. We'll try and shed more light on that with Scott Parker after the game. But yes, you're right, Berge not involved in the match tonight, so of course it will raise eyebrows. It will get people thinking perhaps there is something in all this talk regarding him and his future. On the front of the match day programme tonight, that's Shandon Baptiste, a free signing from Brentford. He starts tonight for Luton, as does Rule Walters, their other free transfer who came in, a youngster from Arsenal. The team news tonight is, of course, that missing Burnley player who would normally be a very important part of the side. He was last season. Will he be again for Burnley this season? Be interesting to find out.
Yeah, maybe Scott Parker can shed some light on that after the match, as you said. Thanks ever so much, Gary. Right, plenty more to come on the transfer show, though. We're going to be talking all things Manchester United as they close in on a double deal, plus interest in a Premier League striker as well. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Let's get to Newcastle now because, Mark, you've got some news of their pursuit of Crystal Palace defender Mark Gay. What can you tell us about that one?
Well, we know centre-back and right-sided centre-back is a position that Eddie Howe is looking to recruit for over the course of this summer. They've got a really strong squad over the last 2.5 years. They've been building this team that's been more than capable of challenging in the top half of the Premier League, but it gets harder to add players that add that quality that they need to go to the next level. They believe Mark Gahey is a player that can certainly do that. We know that the first offer was rejected, the second offer was rejected over the course of the weekend. Newcastle's third offer was lodged with Steve Parish and Crystal Palace, and as we understand it, Crystal Palace are currently reviewing the terms of this offer and deciding their next moves. We don't know the details financially with regards to this third offer. However, we understand the second offer was worth around £50 million. Our information is that Crystal Palace wants in excess of £65 million. So it could be a huge deal potentially for Newcastle to make happen. Mark Gahey has 2 years left on his Crystal Palace contract. Had a fabulous summer, didn't he? Really caught the attention of so many people after his performances for England. Played all but one game for the Three Lions over the course of this summer on their journey to the final. However, this is a deal that Eddie Howe would love to make happen where possible. But financially, again, PSR they have to be conscious of. If this gets too expensive or Crystal Palace continue to reject their advances, Newcastle may have to decide we have to go to other targets.
Yeah, and you'd think that Palace wouldn't want to lose a player, like you said. Gay put himself in the shop window, didn't he, playing for England so brilliantly over the summer. You'd think that Palace wouldn't want to let him go, really.
No, of course not. No, I mean, they've already lost Michael Elise. We talk about, 4 of their star performers, 5, you'd have to say. Elise, Eze, Adam Wharton, Mark Gahey, Mateta now as well, who had such a fantastic end to the season. They've already lost Elisa. There's always talk about Eze. What's his future going to hold? Now, Mark Gahey is subject of 3 bids now from Newcastle. They'd want to keep as much of that squad together for Oliver Glasner, but they also are accepting that if a bid comes in that's too good to turn down, would they be able to get that money again? So it's always a decision to be made as far as Palace are concerned.
OK, what about Manchester United then? Let's talk about them. Are they any closer to this double deal?
Potentially, very close. Matthias de Ligt, centre-back that they've been interested in for some time, the 25-year-old, in fact, 25 years old today.
Oh, happy birthday.
So this would be a really nice present. Arrived at Carrington this morning. We understand the deal that Manchester United and Bayern Munich have agreed on is €45 million plus €5 million in potential add-ons. We're not expecting the personal terms to be an issue. You can see the blacked-out people carrier arriving at the training ground in Manchester earlier on today. This was in advance of him going through the formalities of the medical. We know that Manchester United had a centre-back as one of their priority signings this season, and this potentially could be a really clever, shrewd piece of business from Erik ten Hag and the hierarchy at Manchester United. This is a player that joined Juventus in the summer of 2019 for €75 million, and then 3 years later went from Juventus to Bayern Munich for €77 million. And here you've got Manchester United tying up a deal for someone who's 25, so still got a lot of time in the game ahead of him, for around €50 million. So potentially this could be a massive deal for United, and an area of concern, an area they wanted to strengthen. Not only is he the potential only player to be coming in for Bayern Munich as well, he brought someone on that plane and in that people carrier with him, fullback Nasser Mazraoui, who potentially as well could be another big signing at Old Trafford.
Yeah, I mean, the De Ligt deal looks the more straightforward one because there's no attachment with that deal. It's not conditional on anything else. However, Nasser Mazraoui, we do know, was only going to come to Manchester United provided Manchester United could sell Aaron Wan-Bissaka to West Ham United. Both of those deals are progressing now. I've just been told in the last 10 minutes or so that Wan-Bissaka has now completed his medical at West Ham United. So it's now just a case of the formalities before he finalises that £15 million move. So we're expecting a formal announcement on that one probably in the next 24 hours or so. Mazraoui, as we know, as we saw, is in Manchester as well, having a medical. That deal is worth €20 million in total. That's €15 million initial payment, €5 million in performance-related add-ons. And if you look at this as a whole, this is... I've been speaking about throughout this transfer window about United trying to create finances and trying to create squad space. And it almost felt like that their approach was going to be one in, one out for each position if they wanted to recruit. Now, that's been the case with Mazraoui and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, because we do know that Aaron Wan-Bissaka had entered the final year of his contract, and United weren't in talks to renew that contract, so it was the case of you've got to sell him to make money at this stage of his contract. So that's why, if they decided to do that, they needed to bring in another right-back. The De Ligt one is slightly different because we haven't seen a central defender depart Manchester United for De Ligt to come in. We know Raphael Varane left, but Lenny Yoro had come in. For this one, no one's actually left. Now, that doesn't fit in with what I was saying earlier, one in, one out. But what I am told is that the De Ligt situation is slightly unique because United saw this as a market opportunity that they simply couldn't turn down. As Mark was saying there before, it's an initial payment of 45 million euros. So for them, that was too good a deal not to do at that time. So I can't say that there won't be departures again in the central defensive area, because that could still happen at United. Victor Lindelof is key here, I think. He's into the final year of his contract. There are no plans to extend that contract. So if there is a deal that could come in for Lindelof, I think United would consider it.
OK, that's the defence side of things. Then what about midfield? Where are we with that? Are they still in the market for a midfielder, do you think?
Still very much in the market for a midfielder. Like Dharmesh touched upon there, they have to be very careful because it looks like one in, one out generally across Manchester United transfers. Just to confirm the line that we brought you a little bit earlier on, which is quite interesting because our reporter Gary Cottrell is at Kenilworth Road for the Championship game between Luton and Burnley. One of the players that we know Manchester United are interested in is the Burnley midfielder, Sander Berge. Now, he's not in the squad, not in the 11, not on the bench, not travelled to Luton. Now, can we read into that anything?
He's got an illness.
He's got an illness.
That's what they said.
Or a toe issue.
A niggle.
Niggle. But yeah, so that is one player that's very much on the radar of Manchester United. The other players that potentially they could be looking to do deals with. There is an interest in PSG's Manuel Ugarte. They are in talks with Burnley about Sander Berge. There is a dialogue that remains open with Monaco over Youssef Fofana as well. So that's another player on the radar. Richard Rios, Palmeiras, although financially that might be a difficult deal to make happen. And there is, of course, Fiorentina's Sofyan Amrabat, who was on loan at Manchester United last season. They could potentially return to do a deal there. I think there was an option in that loan deal which they didn't want to trigger because financially it didn't suit them. However, he's another player they know well. He understands the setup at Old Trafford. He played for the club for a year, so will be very much in their thought process. But as you can see there, Vicky, there are a number of players Manchester United just monitoring, keeping tabs on at the moment as they work on these potential deals.
OK, just finally then, Dan, so we haven't got long because we've got to get to a break, I'm being told by Josh, our producer. What about... You have to listen to him.
Honestly.
Stop it. A line from Manchester United and West Ham, what you've got combined there.
Yeah, very, very quickly. This is an interesting one, actually, because the Everton forward, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, is one of a number of forwards that have been discussed by Manchester United during this transfer window. That's all it's gone as far as. So, as it stands, it's not a priority position. We've been talking about United's priority positions. They already signed a forward in this window. It was right back, it was centre back. They're even looking at left back, centre midfield, as Mark has been speaking about as well. So United are unlikely to reinforce in that area again in this transfer window unless there are sales in the forward area. So still one to watch because there could yet be business to be done departure-wise at United in the forward positions. And West Ham United, another line to bring you, this is to do with Kurt Zouma. Now remember, we brought you the news late last week that he was going to be joining Shabab Al-Ali at the UAE club. He was having a medical. Unfortunately, that medical has highlighted some issues. So at the moment, the deal hasn't gone through yet. However, both clubs are still in negotiation over how they can get this deal over the line. Kurt Zouma wants the move. West Ham want the move, as do Shabab Al-Ali. So there's a willingness from all parties to get this one over the line. Now, there is an agreement on personal terms already between the club and the player. There is the possibility that West Ham will mutually terminate the contract of Kurt Zouma because he's only got a year left. However, if there is an issue with this deal because of the medical, there is a possibility that West Ham United could actually loan Kurt Zouma. I know people will say, but he's only got a year left. But if you loan the player to Shabab Al-Ali, then there is an opportunity for West Ham United to contribute some of the wages in exchange for this issue over the medical. As for Zouma himself, he's out in Dubai just waiting for developments for the clubs to come to some sort of agreement.
All right, brilliant.
Not a bad place to wait around, is it?
No. Should we all wait around there? Let's go to Dubai. Who's staying and who's going? We're not going anywhere. Next up, we'll bring you up to speed with the latest transfer business from all 20 Premier League clubs. Stay with us for that.
Welcome back to the Transfer Show. It's time to go around the clubs now. Here's your bite-sized Premier League roundup. Darmish, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mark. Marseille remain interested in Arsenal forward Eddie Nketiah, but have alternative targets if they cannot agree a deal.
Aston Villa have held initial talks with Feyenoord over the potential signing of Lucharel Hertrauder.
Bournemouth have had an offer rejected by Porto for striker Eva Nielsen. Bournemouth deciding whether to go back in with an improved bid.
Napoli midfielder Jean Cajuste is having a medical with Brentford ahead of an initial season-long loan move. The agreement between the clubs includes an obligation to buy him for £10 million.
Napoli are expected to go back in with another offer for Brighton's Billy Gilmore. Brighton rejected an initial approach worth £8 million last month.
The deal to sign Samu Almirodian from Atletico Madrid is currently off. It's thrown into doubt Conor Gallagher's move from Atletico. Chelsea now working on a potential deal for João Felix to rescue that Gallagher move.
Yeah, Crystal Palace looking at centre-back options if Mark Guehi leaves the club.
Everton forward Dominic Calvert-Lewin is one of a number of forwards that have been discussed by Manchester United in this transfer window. As it stands, it is not a priority position and United are unlikely to reinforce in that area unless there are sales.
Fulham remain in talks with Crystal Palace over defender Joachim Andersen. Interest also retained in Aston Villa's Diego Carlos.
Now Ipswich have signed 6 players so far in this window and are among the clubs interested in signing Calvin Phillips from Manchester City.
Sky Germany are reporting Leicester City have an agreement with Bayer Leverkusen for their forward Adam Klosek. It's on an initial loan with the option to buy for around £17 million if Leicester stay up.
Liverpool are still waiting on a decision from Real Sociedad's Martin Zubimendi. The player is considering his future with a £51 million release clause in his contract.
Julian Alvarez has completed his £82 million move to Atletico Madrid. It's a club record sale for Manchester City.
Now, the Bayern Munich pair of Nusayr Mazraoui and Matthias de Ligt have been having their medicals at Manchester United today.
Newcastle United have returned with a third offer for Crystal Palace defender Mark Guehi. Crystal Palace considering the bid.
Now, Nottingham Forest are reportedly close to signing Paraguay international winger Ramon Sousa. Nuno Espirito Santo is also targeting another centre-forward.
Hoffenheim have agreed a £12.8 million deal with Southampton to sign their defender Armel Bella Kochab. He'll have his medical on Tuesday.
Mikey Moore has signed his first professional contract at Tottenham. He turns 17 on Sunday.
Aaron Wan-Bissaka has been having a medical today ahead of his £15 million move to West Ham United from Manchester United.
Wolves are currently in talks with Nantes over a potential deal for the 18-year-old centre-back Bastien Payet. At the moment, he has just 1 year left on his current contract.
West Ham have made 7 signings this summer, and new head coach Julian Lopetegui says there's a certain kind of player he's looking for. Lopetegui is preparing for his first Premier League match in charge of the club this weekend against Aston Villa.
While the market is open, anything can happen in all the teams, so we know how is the football side. The most important thing is that the players, they are working with us. They have to be with a big commitment. We need to put inside the dressing room ambitious players. So for us it's important, and to be ready to overcome the difficulties moments. For me, the more important strength in one team is to be able that, because for sure we are going to have bad moments, to be able to overcome as a group all these moments, and to know that we have to achieve our aims in the end of the season is more important. That's why I think that we have to work very hard.
We have to work very hard as well. Well, you do in particular, Mark, because apparently there's another line in from Newcastle. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this is a story that's just developed with us here at Sky Sports News, and it concerns Miguel Almiron. Newcastle have received an approach for the winger from the MLS side, Charlotte. Still a lot of work to potentially get this deal done, and very little time to find an agreement because the MLS transfer window shuts on August the 14th, so just 2 days away. Some reports have suggested that there are some of the hierarchy from Charlotte in the country at the moment to try and tie up a deal. Of course, Miguel Almiron is a huge part of Newcastle's first-team squad, and they would be reluctant to sell him. And if they were potentially to find a deal, it would have to be a decent price as well, because replacing a first-team player is not easy financially. Miguel Almiron has 2 years left on his current Newcastle contract. Nearly went to the Saudi Pro League in January. Number of clubs interested in him there, but he rejected those opportunities to stay and fight for his place at Newcastle and continue that journey that he's on with Eddie Howe at the moment. But yeah, an interesting line there because Newcastle have received an approach from Charlotte with regards to Miguel Almiron.
OK, stay with us, because we're going to bring you the rest of today's transfer news. Here's Arne Slot closing in on his first signing as Liverpool boss. It's a hugely busy window, isn't it, for certain teams, but not so for Liverpool at the moment. Arne Slot and the team are yet to make a signing this window. So, Mark, the question is, are they getting any closer to getting someone over the line?
I think one of the things to point out with Liverpool, first of all, very quickly, is that they had plans to allow Arne Slot to look at the squad. They had a number of players that were playing in the Euros, so coming back to pre-season late. The same with Copa America players. And, of course, as you saw with Jurgen Klopp last season, a number of youngsters that got into that Liverpool first team in and around cup matches and proved that they had a lot of quality there as well. You know, people like Conor Bradley wasn't expected to develop in the pace that he has. So, therefore, the manager just wanted time to assess all of the options. So they were quite relaxed going into this window about making new signings and only making signings that they believed would improve the first team. One player they do believe potentially could improve that Liverpool 11, Martin Zubimendi at Real Sociedad. A 25-year-old, he's a pivot, a six, someone that can just shield that back four, play in the base of a midfield and would add so much there. Liverpool are still patiently awaiting a response from the player. Now, it's important to point out that it's actually the player that can make this decision because he has a release clause of £51 million that Liverpool are willing to meet. So, therefore, it's his decision as to whether or not he decides to join Liverpool. There are a number of sides that have tried to prize Zubimendi away from Real Sociedad over the last few years, but he's opted to stay. And it's not completely off the table that Real Sociedad couldn't offer him a new contract and he could sign a better contract with bigger wages and stay at the club even more so. One to keep an eye on, Liverpool currently just in that waiting, holding pattern at the moment to see what the player decides to do.
All right. What about the Premier League new boys, Ipswich then, Darmash? What can you tell us about them? They're making big moves.
Showing a lot of ambition in this transfer window. They're really going for it. Since Kieran McKenna announced that he was going to stay, they're really backing him. They've signed a number of players in this transfer window already. They're still in talks with Blackburn Rovers over the Championship top scorer from last season, Sammy Schmodics. There's still a little gap in valuation between what Ipswich are prepared to pay and what Blackburn want. That one looks like it's going to continue ongoing talks. But they're also one of a number of clubs interested in the Manchester City and England midfielder Calvin Phillips, which would be an ambitious move as well. We understand City are listening to offers. Ipswich likely to explore a loan deal because he's still got 4 years left on his contract. Everton, we know, showed an interest in Calvin Phillips earlier on in this transfer window. So could be definitely one to watch, Phillips, for the rest of this window.
OK, what about Bournemouth then? Have they got anyone in line to replace Dominic Solanke? Because he's their talisman, surely.
Yeah, huge player. You know, Bournemouth to try and replace someone like Dominic Solanke would probably need around £65 million, which is what Tottenham have paid Bournemouth for the 26-year-old. So, yeah, he's a player that is going to be difficult to replace. He's been a big part of what Antonio Iraola's done over the last year or so. We know that they've had an offer rejected by Porto for the Brazilian international, Evanilson, 24-year-old. He's a physical player, very different in profile to what Dominic Solanke was. A little bit more old school, a little bit more rough and tumble, would give a few Premier League defenders a tough time because of his physicality. He'd certainly adapt well to the top flight here in England. He scored and assisted 81 goals and assists in 154 games for Porto. So he knows where the back of the net is, comes with good pedigree at a great age. However, that initial offer rejected. So Bournemouth just weighing up what their next move is, whether they decide to go back again or whether they look to other targets. But it's fair to say they would have had a number of other targets should Dominic Solanke have left in this window. This wouldn't have that caught them cold. They would have been aware this was something potentially that could happen, so they will be, you know, going through their list.
Darmash, where we are with Fulham strengthening their defence?
Yeah, so we do know at the start of the window they were looking to strengthen in central defence because Tosin had seen out his contract and he left and he's now joined Chelsea. Tim Ream has also left the club, so in total probably 2 defenders that they wanted to bring in. They brought in one from Villarreal, Jorge Cuenca. They do want to bring in another one. They remain in talks with Crystal Palace over the potential signing of Joachim Andersen. They have made one bid, which we think is around £20 million, which falls well short of Crystal Palace's valuation. But the talks are continuing between the clubs, and I think the outcome of those talks will basically dictate to Fulham whether it's worthwhile them going back in with an improved offer. Against the backdrop of that, they've got an interest in another player, and that's the Aston Villa central defender, Diego Carlos.
Okay.
Again, they've made a bid for Carlos. That's been rejected by Aston Villa. And again, they're discussing internally whether they're going to go back in with an improved offer. He would more likely be substantially cheaper than Joachim Andersen's asking price. So they're looking at 2 players, it seems, at the moment, and they want to bring in another central defender.
OK, we talked about Dominic Solanke coming into Spurs, but there's been an outgoing as well, Mark, at Spurs.
Yes, sorry, there's just some
you
interesting...
were distracted, it's
yeah,
okay.
there may be a line that we can bring you just before we get off air, but I need to try and speak to Dharmesh privately.
Wow, what shall I do, a cartwheel or...?
Just text me.
I'll text you.
I can tell you about this done deal, though. It's
Yes.
Emerson Royal. AC Milan have confirmed the signing of Emerson Royal from Tottenham. He signed a contract with the Italian club until 2028, and that comes with the option of a further year. The fee, we understand, is around £12.8 million. There's pictures of Emerson Royal. You can see there in Milan. He actually joined Tottenham from Barcelona 3 seasons ago for £25.8 million.
Pick up your phone, send the text. Good. OK, this
I'm
is
ready.
great. Are you ready to talk about Aston Villa? They want a defender from Feyenoord, apparently. Now,
Yeah,
read, quick.
a defender into the last year of his contract. Aston Villa have held initial talks with Feyenoord over Luciano Hertrauda, 24-year-old right back, played in the Euros, actually, for the Netherlands, so has good pedigree. But yeah, Luciano Hertrauda is a name on the radar for Aston Villa.
I don't know where to go. Have you picked up your phone? Can you confirm or deny what he said?
I have to wait.
I have. I need to make a call on
Oh,
to see if we
wow.
can...
We need to wait. We're trying.
Trying to get a live done deal or something that's going on. OK, look, couple of big done deals take place over the weekend. Dominic Solanke's moved to Spurs. Chelsea's moved for Pedro Neto as well. He was waving to the crowd, wasn't he? Tomorrow could be a really big day, though.
It could be. We've been speaking about them throughout this transfer show. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's move from Manchester United to West Ham United, that is almost done. And then the 2 deals for Manchester United, they've been having the medicals. Matthijs de Ligt from Bayern Munich and, of course, Nouzer Mazraoui as well from Bayern Munich.
Oh, you two need to talk. Go and talk to one another. Look, you won't miss a thing on the transfer show tomorrow night. I don't think these two are back tomorrow night. You're both doing something else. I don't know. Anyway, Michael Bridge and James Savundra, I'm being told, shouted in my ear. Back at slightly different times as well. 5 p.m. and 6:30. You won't miss a thing.